Hi, my name's Ruth Royal and I'm with Youth Pledge for Employers, and we're really delighted today to be talking to Richard Vass, who's Managing Director at Burland Technology. Lovely to see you, Richard.
Likewise, Ruth, nice to meet you too.
So tell us a bit about Burland Technology and what you do.
Well, not necessarily very exciting. We are a UK Suffolk-based business that designs and manufactures power, data and audio-visual connectivity solutions. Not very exciting on the face of it, but if you think about your day-to-day life at school, at home, or indeed in an office, you'll realise that there's connectivity absolutely everywhere you look, be it power sockets and plugs powering up your monitors and your computers or your laptops, USB charging points for your phones and or your laptops, and indeed, excuse me, other AV things like HDMI connectors, which might connect your laptop up to a projector or a screen or a TV. Those connections and that connectivity all requires to be housed in some kind of housing or entity. Excuse me, and those can vary from the most simplest little outlets that sit onto a desk to extremely heavy duty and high powered and high technology items that might go into a data center, for example. So in a data center where the cloud is hosted or the internet is run, the power strips there will have the ability to individually monitor how much power is being consumed by each socket outlet, which would relate obviously to a particular server, and also the ability using SNMP, which is Simple Network Protocol, or IP, so over the internet. People are able, or network managers are able to actually turn sockets on and off to recycle equipment or reboot servers and that kind of thing. So it's not, you know, a B&Q £2.99 extension lead. They are significantly more complicated. And we do everything. Sorry, carry on.
No, I was just saying, I've never thought about connectivity from that perspective, that actually somebody's got to physically make those connections about how things.
As I say, it doesn't on the face of it seem very exciting, and perhaps it's not, but it is absolutely everywhere, and somebody's got to do it. There are companies that do it well and there are companies that do it badly, and we like to think that we do it very well. We also have product ranges and expertise in our skill sets to manage every aspect of what we describe as the power chain. So if I think about an office space, for example, all the power and all the data and the internet and the fiber will all come into a particular place on a floor, usually what we'd refer to as a riser. And then that has to be distributed all the way through the floor to end up in and on somebody's desk or on a meeting table or a presentation table. So we have underfloor buzz bar systems. We've then got floor boxes or floor access grommets. And then we've got various kind of tap-offs and connectivity that connects up individual desks for power underneath the desk, for fixed equipment like monitors or fixed PCs, printers. And then we have power and USB charging on top of a desk, which is what we often refer to as above desk units or user power or convenience power. That lots of people have different names for it. So we supply absolutely everything within that supply chain. And we also, you know, moving out of the one sphere of offices, we also do a lot of work all over the world for making more heavy duty floor access boxes, which go outside. So they're waterproof. Right. You'll often find in market stores, you see it's a normal street, but on market days, everybody's plugging a lot of, you know, electrical equipment and lighting and refrigeration and God knows what else into it. Well, we make that kind of gear as well. Wow. So we have a lot of design engineering expertise here, which does a lot of custom work, because every job we do is slightly different, and every client is slightly different, every building is slightly different. But notwithstanding that, we also, particularly in overseas developments, are required to start from scratch and design completely customized units, which is a good place to be, because, you know, we're smaller than many of our major competitors who are big global organizations, and they're geared up to mass produce large volumes of one particular type of product, or two or three or four. We, being much more niche, tend to concentrate on areas where there is a lot higher degree of customization and input required, which we have a greater ability and a desire to do that kind of work, whereas the bigger guys don't like it because it upsets their manufacturing systems. And the great thing about being niche, okay, it's smaller volume, but it tends to be higher value and higher margin.
And with so I mean, that sounds incredibly complicated in a way that, like I said, I've sort of never really reflected on in terms of how those things just occur when you sit down at a desk or you go into a school, and those things just, in my mind, are magically there. Which,
well,
of course,
it's funny you should say that. Like when sort of selling to a sort of a construction project, one of the things I'll always say is that if you get us involved early enough, I mean, I've got 30 years doing this particular work in this particular field. If you get me involved early enough on a major project, I can make sure that all these sort of things that need to be considered get taken into consideration. And when a project is completed, be that an office block, office building, office floor, you'll never know that we were there because everything just works. And no, you wouldn't see all this connectivity. You wouldn't know there because it's all work, out of sight, out of mind. It all works, and it's out of sight and out of mind. When it's not done properly, and it's often sort of left a little bit late on people's lists of priorities, it can ruin a whole scheme. You know, if there's insufficient power, so people have got to start adding on extra extension leads or having cables running across the floor, and it happens. It happens a lot. So yeah, this whole idea of sort of if the job's done well, it's out of sight, out of mind, and that's what we try and achieve for our customers.
And I guess probably sort of thinking about that seems to me that's probably got a really, across your organisation, there's a really different breadth of jobs that people must do. From getting businesses in the door is probably a very different skill set to designing what those businesses need, perhaps, or and again to actually then being able to manufacture what they need. Would you talk us through perhaps some of the different sorts of roles that exist in your organisation, and perhaps the different kind of skills and training that's needed to do the different ones?
Absolutely. We're not dissimilar from any business in having all those things. You know, you've got the sales, you've got the fulfillment, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you know, there are areas of us where we're good, but we need more beefing up. Bear in mind what the reason we're talking today is to try and sort of help with recruitment and create jobs. But from the sort of the business development side of it, the sales side of it, that we rely an awful lot of word of mouth and existing relationships, both here and overseas. Personally, it's the area that I find myself most busy in. Is bringing the work in, not just because I like to travel overseas, but it's also my area of expertise and I know what our capabilities are. So once we've got an inquiry coming in, we then have got, depending on what's involved with the job, if the job is just sort of satisfying the needs and the requirements of that particular project and that particular customer from existing ranges, then it just sort of goes into our whole sort of sales administrative process where somebody will take some of the brief from me or take it direct from the client, produce quotations. Once those quotations are approved and an order is placed, then the sales order administration takes control.
What sort of skills do the sales order administration team need to be able to do that?
Well, obviously, apart from being numerically competent, because it does always involve numbers, we often get involved in doing takeoffs from drawings. So an architect or an engineer will send us drawings, and so we need to do count-ups and interpretations of keys, etc., which is not complicated. You can learn that skill quite quickly. And then producing the quotations involves one, obviously having to have a product knowledge, because it's very difficult to write specifications with numbers. You need to be able to visualize what a part number is to make sure you're doing the right thing. And as I say, the sort of the training required with that, anybody that's basically got some degree of savvy can be trained up for that job. Then their sort of function, if you like, is to acknowledge the orders when they come through. Well, first of all, we'd quote it. When that's ordered, it's acknowledged, so the customer knows that they're getting what they think they're going to get. And then things move on to sort of the acquisition side of it. So we have to buy that.
Right.
Now, those products will either come from product that we have stocked in our warehouse, so it's a very quick delivery, or we would order them if it's a product that needs to be manufactured. And here we are different to many of our competitors because we use what we refer to as a subcontract manufacturing model.
Okay.
I've had businesses in the past where we've made everything that we can, and it does slightly limit you in that you can only make what you can make. And so if a customer comes up with a need for something slightly different, it's a problem. And that's the problem all our competitors have. We are in the fortunate position that what we're able to do is having a small, very select and proven set of subcontractors that we work very, very closely with. We know what their capabilities are, and they're all slightly different. So depending on the needs of a project or the needs of a particular design, the materials, do we need to work in stainless steel? Do we need to work in plastics? Do we need to work in whatever? We'll always go to the best person that has the skill sets involved, and that's an engineering and a procurement issue.
Right.
So as with any small business, we have all the different functions. We've got the sales, we've got the sales administration, we've got the purchasing, we've got the engineering. Then none of them exist in isolation. Everybody cross-fertilizes and gets involved a little bit because that's the nature of the beast with a smaller business, for two reasons. One, we all need to bang our heads together to get the best outcome. But secondly, we've all got to have days off and holidays and get ill. And with a small business, we don't have a department for all those areas. They're usually one person. So if that person's away, everyone else needs to cover it. So it makes life working in our business very interesting for the people that work here because every day is very different.
That does sound good, isn't it? Because I think sometimes that it's so interesting to have days where you've got a lot of variety in terms of what you're doing. With your engineering side, what sort of things and what sort of training do the engineers have with you who perhaps work for you?
Well, if I could find them, I could tell you. It is our weakest link at the moment. We are struggling to recruit design engineers who are competent using CAD, computer-aided design. We did have somebody supposed to start last week. Spent about £6,000 on a new workstation for them. Had the office prepared and all the rest of it, and we just phoned them on the Friday to make sure that they were all set to come on Monday, and they told us they'd gone back to Scotland without letting us know, which is very shocking. So we have vacancies. If there are any CAD engineers looking at this who are competent in working with Creo, please do get in touch. So it's our head of engineering here that does most of the customized design work, works with plastic, stainless steel, a lot of sheet metal work, which is to do custom designs, but also we've got a lot of work that we need to do to update some of our existing designs. Since we moved into Suffolk in 2008, we acquired another business that had a lot of metal products, and they were based in London, and their designs used to be dictated by the capabilities of their suppliers. Now we don't use those suppliers anymore. We're using, dare I say, much better suppliers up here in Suffolk, and they've got different capabilities. So we need to adapt our designs to work on their capabilities and capitalize on the benefits.
So do you feel that in terms of sort of people thinking about a career in engineering, for example, that there are particular skills that are very in demand in terms of what's needed? And you've touched on sort of CAD engineers, computer-aided design, and are there also qualities about people that you look to recruit into those positions that make them good at those roles, as well as perhaps technical qualifications like
absolutely. I mean, when you're dealing with sort of engineering issues, you've got to have almost an obsession with attention to detail. If one is slipshoddy, rushes things, or doesn't have that eye for detail or for the finer detail, we can go a long way down a design. We can get prototypes built and find they don't work or they can't be built. And that's a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of effort. So the old expression is measure twice, cut once. And so if you don't have that ability to give that attention to detail, then I don't think that sort of engineering is the right place for you. And our products are very specific. There's always going to be a place for somebody that's got artistic flair, because aesthetics are very important. Whether they're relevant or not is neither here nor there. If somebody's buying a product, they have to, the look, feel, touch has to be, has to be inviting, even if nobody's going to actually see it once it's installed. But we are never going to achieve what we need to achieve by somebody that can make things look pretty they all have to be able to be built in the first place cost effectively and in a functional way. So, the ideal person is going to have that attention to detail and good engineering skills, and obviously that means you're going to have to be very good with your mathematics and your numbers. But somebody that also had some artistic, creative flair would be marvelous.
Right, brilliant. Oh, that's really interesting to understand, because you don't always think of those skill sets as being, you tend to think, you sometimes think of artistic, as sort of being almost slightly, not very grounded. But actually, what you're talking about is that the creative ability to be able to see how something should be used, and then the sort of the attention to detail and the technological understanding to be able to understand how you would then go ahead and build that thing in that way.
I mean, the most common analogy you would use, it's always used for everything, is the motor industry. Of course, a motor vehicle can be a thing of beauty, but it's no bloody use if it's not all screwed together or riveted together or welded together in the right way and works. Exactly, and it's on a much simpler basis. That's where we're at as well.
Yeah. Oh no, that's really interesting to understand. And if you recruit people into your organisation as in sort of those engineering roles, do they tend to come with experience, or do you tend to recruit people in and train them up?
We take either. We'd prefer somebody with a bit of experience, because that's the path of least resistance from ourselves. If somebody was to walk through the door tomorrow that was academically qualified and had been trained up and had the skills but didn't have the work experience or the industry experience, if they were exceptional characters, we'd absolutely take them on if we can see the right raw material to deal with, and give them as much training as is required. We've been very successful here with apprentices in the past. Not in engineering, in other areas of administration. The guy who heads up our administration department, for lack of a better word, he's been with us for 6 years now, and he joined us at 18.
Oh wow, that's brilliant.
As an apprentice, and he was only an apprentice for 6 months because he started making a good contribution. We put him on a full-time salary, and another apprentice was with us for 7 years.
Oh wow.
Then decided it was time to move on. So we're absolutely not against the idea of taking people on that are green. Provided they've got the right attitude.
And those underlying
we work hard here, we work efficiently here, and we reward people properly, and nobody gets carried, because anybody that gets carried is letting down everyone else here. That really sort of puts their nose to the grindstone.
It sounds overall, though, in terms of like the sort of company ethos, that you've got high standards in terms of performance, but also that's reflected in terms of what you're actually delivering to your customers.
Absolutely.
And that's what's taken.
Absolutely.
That's what's taken to do that. And sort of from your perspective, Richard, really just kind of as a note to end on, really, if you were to go back and have a conversation with your younger self starting out your career, age 16, 18, whatever that was, what piece of career advice do you think you'd give yourself?
That's it. Get out on a boat and go and sailing for the rest of my life. No, realistically, I would say yes. I would say that your mind moves to your dominant thought. If you think you can't do it, you'll never do it. There's every single person out there can do anything and be anything they want to be. They just have to believe that it's possible and believe that they can do it and use their vivid imagination. But defeatist attitudes and self-pity get you absolutely nowhere. And not that I've ever suffered from that, but I did have perhaps, I didn't have this acceptance that absolutely anything was possible and I could be as good as the next guy. So my aspirations were slightly lower than they should have been. But I've learned a lot over the years, and yeah, absolutely. I'd say to myself, if I was looking back, or to any 16, 17, 18-year-old now, you can be whatever you want to be. You just got to have the right mindset.
Oh, I think that's a fantastic message. Mindset is just so important, isn't it? In terms of achieving things. Just interested to know what sort of changed you then. What made you sort of change your mindset?
Oh, one just by being successful at what I've been doing, and also as a life-changing course. I went on the Mancroft International Winning Edge, which is Richard Jackson, who's now retired.
Right.
And it was it's the only course I've ever been on in my life, and it was life-changing. Just absolutely teaches you. It's not what you think; it's how you think about what you think about, and that goes on for 3 days. But it was exceptional, and I wish I'd I wish I'd met him and or been on his course 20 years earlier. And you know, as all the people on that course said, you know, God, why don't they teach this in schools? Because you know, aspiration is something that everybody should have, but we're all born the same. We're all born the same.
Absolutely, and all those innate skills and things are there for us all, aren't they?
Yes. Well, but and I, you know, there's two sides to the equation. One is people not having the aspiration to believe in themselves, and the other side is there are people, which tend to be adults, that tell people they can't do something and this is not for them. So that's equally destructive and completely unjustified. I mean, I'm trying to think of an example that's not going to be offensive in any way, shape, or form, which you have to be careful about now. But you know, if you've reached the age of 18 and you are absolutely numerically dyslexic and can't do stuff, you know, maths is going to be a problem. However, I know people that are severely dyslexic and they run multi-billion pound businesses because they realized they were severely dyslexic, and they dealt with it, and their dad sent them down to the bookies for a few years to learn how to become massively numerically attuned. But you know, there are some limitations that people can have, and that's life. You have to get over it. But generally speaking, in inverted commas, normal person, I don't know how you describe it or how you define a normal person, but we're all born equal, and anybody can do anything and be anyone, but you have to believe in it. And you know, if your mind moves to your dominant thought, I'm going to be a failure, you will always prove yourself right.
I love that your mind moves to your dominant thought. I think mindset, like you said, is absolutely key. Richard, it's been brilliant to meet you today. Thank you so much for sharing your time.
It's a pleasure. All right, take care.